Gosh, this is so hard. This is soul sucking. My back hurts. These team members, these patients are sucking the life from me. I need a plan. How do I replace my dental income with real estate income?
You should be getting a greater return in real estate because it's a little more work. Like it's more of a skill, right?
So let's say a dentist is making like, oh, 600K a year. Okay. They're probably throwing 200K a year at the IRS and 200K a year into investing. So I'm saying for this 600K dentist or 700K dentist, that's how much they're making a year. If instead of throwing 200K at the IRS and 200K into investing, you're not throwing any to the IRS and you're investing all 400K.
If you can grow your income at the same rate that you're growing your lifestyle, like in the beginning, it's this. I kept my expenses low, income was going up. I had that big delta that I can invest. Now, if you choose to keep your expenses go up, but you can also increase your income at the same time, then you still have that same delta. You can invest and keep growing.
What's great about this bank loan, most of these are fixed. It doesn't go up. So even though your expenses are going a little bit and your revenue is going up a lot, which is awesome, your debt service isn't going up. Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Session.
This is where we unpack one key wealth building strategy at a time and show you how to apply it.
We have a great wealth strategy session today on how to build an income replacing real estate portfolio. With me today is the Sultan of Smart Money, Dr. Reed Faldett. Reed, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, Josh. Ready to dive into some of this stuff. It's a very fun topic for me. So, how are you doing?
We're good, brother. Happy Friday. Let's dive in.
Okay.
Reed, who are we trying to help today, and what problem are we trying to solve with this subject?
Yeah. I think this is like probably the most common question you get is if if you have someone, a dentist, a hiring dentist, it's like, hey, I don't want to do dentistry forever. How do I get to the point of replacing my dental income, right? Like what's my exit
I,
plan?
I think just more accurately, it's gosh, this is so hard. This is soul sucking. My back hurts. These team members, these patients are sucking the life from me. I need a plan. How do I replace my dental income with real estate income?
Yes, that is a more accurate way. I was, trying to be nice, but it is more that. And to tell you the truth, like this is where it all starts for many of us. For myself, I think for Josh too, you're just like, ooh, I don't want to rely on this thing called dentistry forever, right? Like, what are some exit paths, or at least, possible exit paths? And so I think we're really trying to at least maybe reverse engineer what that might look like for you or how you can think about this, so you can kind of work towards that possible exit, on the timeline that you want, not when you're maybe 65 years old and already burnt out, but maybe a little sooner in life.
A real plan as opposed to a concept, right? How do you take this
Yes.
concept, this idea that's attractive, and actually execute it? Yeah, love it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Reed, what's first item here that pops up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it often starts with the math, so sometimes you just have to reverse back from what you need, right? So this is just a good concept of financial planning altogether, right? The FIRE movement or all those type of things, it really relies on figuring out what is the number you need, your burn rate or whatever that lifestyle number is you need. So that if your real estate portfolio or your stock portfolio, whatever it is that is producing an income for you, is high enough for you to walk away from your active job.
Yeah.
So it starts there. I don't think we don't need to put out numbers and everything there, but I'll say it starts there. Now, once you know what that number is, let's just throw out a number and say it's $300,000 a year. Now you can work back, well, how much real estate do I need to buy in order to achieve that income? Right. So, I mean, it's kind of like that. That's kind of the simple steps. Um, and so there's some key principles around, well, now I know how much money I need to invest a year, right? The size of the real estate portfolio I ultimately need to build because you're going to know your timeline. You need, your end date or at least your end amount, You know your timeline that you want to get there. Now you need to know how much equity you need to apply every year to get to that real estate portfolio. And then from there, it's targeting the right size deals or the right type of deals that'll produce that income for you. But this is where Josh and I will probably vary a little bit on
Mm.
how
And
you
I
build to that
think
point.
I think going back up to the I think we should go through the numbers actually and like just calculate how we do it. Another piece on the start one, your freedom, like it's your freedom number, your independence number, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
You also need to look at, so like the pieces there, what do I look at typically? One is I look at what I need to pay off, right? Because typically when people want to be free, they don't want like debt hanging over their head, right? So what items do you need to pay off, right? Is that student loans? Is that your practice at some point? Is that your primary residence? Is it your lake residence, right? Those are the four most common ones I see. Okay. So part of that plan is paying off debt. Another one is the life budget, right? Like putting together your budget. Like if I paid off all this debt, how much do I need to live off of, right? And then taxes, right? So is it 300K before tax, 300K after tax? So I think
How about this though? So you kind of lump in the freedom number, including paying off all your debt. So your assumption is that this freedom number has to be you're in a debt-free position.
on personal expenses.
So you could look at it though as like your burn rate could include a mortgage, right? And so you don't
You
necessarily need to be
you
debt-free in order to achieve that.
you could, but I would say like a majority of people don't want a mortgage when they're living the passive life. Like I don't know anybody who says, "Hey, I'm retired. Oh yeah, I still have a mortgage." It's I paid off my mortgage. Okay, check, right? Like it just
Yep.
makes people feel better. I just don't know anybody emotionally that is comfortable retiring with a mortgage. People with means, they always pay it off first. I've just never seen someone not. Um,
Yeah, I think when I was, and I think I should pull this up because this would be more helpful,
okay.
as this kind of five-step framework for getting there. I have this kind of written up and you can kind of see the math of it. But yeah, so I think this would be helpful. How I thought about it, because I was at the very beginning of this conversation, you're like, dude, I'm so burnt out on dentistry. I can't do this anymore. Like, help, how do I get out of this? Well, if you feel like you have to be debt free in order to get out of dentistry, then I think that timeline's going to be extended, you know?
I think it
So
is, and I
you
think
can
it's
do
the
that.
reality because I just, yeah, I just don't know anybody who has done it otherwise. Like every time we have this conversation with folks, they always pay off their mortgage prior to, because you're getting passive income, but you don't have active income, right? So I feel like it's super stressful for folks to have a home payment,
I
but
I think this goes back to the debate of if you have a 3.5% mortgage, right? Like,
that's a good point.
is it really a good use of capital to pay down your house just for the sake of being debt free? And I would
Okay,
say it's
okay.
not.
Yeah, yeah. If you're like in the threes, then you're right. I would elect not to. Okay, you got me on board. But
Well,
over,
yeah,
but over, but if you're in the fives, the sixes, like you better pay that off.
there's a line, right? There's a line with that you have to consider.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so we're generally aligned on that. Let me see, Josh. This might be helpful if I just pull this up quick,
yeah,
okay? And then
good.
you can tell me if you like this or not. Can you see this?
Five-step framework. Yep.
Right. Right. So this is what we're kind of talking about. Know your income number, right? Choose a reasonable average rate of return. I said 8% for this. Calculate your nest egg amount. So in this case, it'd be 3.75 million. So that's the portfolio value required to generate that desired income amount. And then you can from there back into your savings plan, right? In order to reach this in we'll call it 10 years, this is roughly how much you would need to invest per year.
Yeah, will you blow this up a little bigger, and then I'm going to tear this apart in a positive way.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm trying to keep it simple, but
No,
let's do
no, no, no. So five-step framework is perfect for simplicity. It's a good, like everything you're doing here is perfect. but I'm gonna just add like the real world action steps to this to get us there, right? So, what annual income would cover the lifestyle you want in retirement? So, first thing you need to do is, track your budget, right? Budget out everything, right? So, I think that's step one is like your personal budget. Um,
On that front, I think one of the debates we always have amongst friends is I think many dentists think they need a higher income than what they actually do because you don't necessarily need to replace your income fully. You need to replace your expenses, right? Or at least cover your expenses. And this is where budgeting kind of tells you what you're spending year to year, right?
yeah. So, yeah, I dive in and I map out my entire budget, right? Like all my personal stuff, loans, insurance, savings, everything. Whatever it is, like I just get like super intentional about it and I get clear, within like 20,000 bucks
That's pretty
what my
tight.
budget looks like that year. So you got to do that first, right? Because then, like, you and your spouse can get really clear on what's important to you, right? Where you
Mhm.
guys are spending your money and what's important to you. And then also, like, you got to do it conservative, right? But I usually will do it like 10 years in advance. So I say to myself, okay, I say, okay, let's say inflation is 4% a year between now and 10 years from now, right? So I take the entire budget, I get rid of stuff that I don't think are going to be there anymore, right? If I decide to pay off my house, I get rid of that. If you're paying for your kids going to private school or something, like you get rid of that. Okay. So like these are all the things like 10 years from now, what is this going to look like? I'll just use 10-year timeline because that's the most popular one I hear. Okay.
Yep.
And then I make my whole budget. And then after I make my whole budget, I take every single one of those numbers and I make a new column and I do compounding inflation on that. Okay. So use whatever one number you want, 4%, 3%, but it's like 1.03 to the 10th, right? I multiply every single number by 1.03 to the 10th. So I know 10 years from now, this is what my budget's most likely going to look like.
Mhm.
Okay. So we talked about making a budget. We talked about projecting that budget 10 years from now. Like what are your actual expenses do you imagine are going to be 10 years? Your life is going to be different 10 years from now. And then um and then using inflation to come up with inflated numbers for that 10 years. Okay. And
So basically, you're just creating subtasks underneath this category. It's like, how
yeah,
do you get to this
teaching
number?
people to how, right? Because if they
Yep.
just pick
Yep.
300K, it's like, well, that's not really personalized to you, even though that's probably a very common number, right? And then
Yep.
the last part is taxes, right? You got to look at your tax rate too, and then put that in there too. I would look at tax as an expense, so that helps me get clear on what my pre-tax income needs to be. Good?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So that's perfect. So we go over know your income number and how we calculate it. Next one is choose a reasonable average rate of return. Okay, so I think of two different numbers when I think of returns. Okay. When I think of my income number and spending, I don't look at average rate of return, I look at cash flow, right? Cash on cash return. When I'm growing my wealth, I'm trying to grow my balance sheet, my nest egg, I look at average rate of return. But when I'm trying to do calculations on what am I going to live off of, I do it based off of cash flow. So if you're in this model here, we're first using average rate of return because we're saying you have a nest egg here. We want how big do we need to grow that at nest egg, right? So this is
Mhm.
the right questions for now, but no, at 10 years, you're not looking at average rate of return anymore. Once you get to that point, you're looking at cash flow at that point. So good.
Yeah, it would only depend on if we're going to talk real estate, um, the return is going to be cash flow that we want to think about because we're not going to liquidate the real estate in order to generate the income that we need. I mean, that would be
Right.
the goal at the end. The goal
Yep.
at the end would be this piece of real estate or collection of properties that equals the amount of this nest egg produces this cash flow, right? Which could be 5%, 10%, whatever. So versus the other side of this is if you build to a stock portfolio worth the same amount, 3.75 million or whatever, then it's more of that 3%, 4% safe withdrawal that you have to think about.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
so we're just going to talk more about the real estate side, just so people, the same
Yeah.
concept applies as you're building the nest egg. Now, just
Right.
at the end, what are you holding? What
Yeah.
assets are you holding? So
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So like this week, this lady, her husband owns a gym in town. He used to be like a big gym guy. He's got Alzheimer's now. She owns one of the gym buildings, right? A large gym franchise that pays her every month, right? And her cash flow from that gym is 50,000 a month, right?
Mhm.
So that is kind of like, but 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? Those weren't the numbers with that gym, right? So
Yep.
that's what we're trying to get you to is like you own this gym and you're getting 50K a month or whatever the number is. Okay, sounds good. So
Yep.
reasonable average return. So let's discuss this. In your brain here, what is a reasonable average return for different asset classes, or how do you look at reasonable average return?
You peg it, I usually peg it to the stock market, right? Like I want a nice conservative number. So a lot of people say over the last, 150 years, the stock market has on average returned 10% a year. Um, right? Like that's a number that comes out often.
And for
So,
the last 10 years, I would say 8% historically. We were trained in finance class.
okay. So that's basically the number I'm throwing out here is 8%, right? It's just let's do historical averages. Let's not assume we're going to be better or worse. Let's just hit the middle.
Okay, I'm gonna share. Like I give presentations on this, so I'm just gonna share if that's okay too.
Yep, you're
Okay,
good.
this is this big enough. Oops.
I'll have to stop sharing 1 second. Go ahead, pull yours up.
Okay. Well, I had it queued and then I changed my size, my screen. One sec. Okay, so here is a. So if you look at like 8% returns, okay, if a dentist socks away 200K a year at 8% returns, after 20 years, you'll have 10 million bucks. Okay. This
Hmm.
is this is rounded, but this is pretty close.
Okay.
Real estate on average, if you look at income, depreciation, equity pay down, um, appreciation, and interest expense, you like on decent real estate, right? Not stuff you buy off of Zillow, but or online. Like, by the way, like commercial brokers look at commercial properties, they cherry pick all the good stuff. Okay. So if you're ever looking on like Crexy or LoopNet, you're like, gosh, none of these pencil. It's because the brokers, if they pencil, they buy them themselves. That is the nature of the industry. Okay. So just understand that. That's why they become brokers. So they can cherry pick. That's one of the main benefits of being a broker. Um, but anyways, if you buy like solid real
Wait,
estate at the right price, average annual returns are 16%.
are you showing the screen right now?
I am on my end. Yeah, I can see it as
Oh,
shared.
okay. I can't see it on mine. So let
So
me see.
hopefully it's shared. Nothing else we can
Okay. All
do.
right. Keep going. Keep going.
So 16% annual average return. Okay. So if you're getting 16% average annual return, you're still putting in that same 200K a year invested. After 20 years, you've got $30 million. Dollars.
Mhm.
Okay.
Three
So
times.
three times, right?
Yep.
And so how do you project what your portfolio is going to be worth in 10 years or 20 years, depending on your timeline, it's just what return metric you're using, right? And what return metric do you use? Well, you use it based off of what you're investing in, right? If you're 50% stock and 50% real estate, then you should use 12%, right? And when I say real estate, you have to know what you're doing, okay? Stock market's easy. You just do dollar cost averaging, dollar cost investing into index funds, right? Dollar cost average. Like it's simple. You just put it on autopilot. But to
Mhm.
actually get 16% on real estate, you have to know how to vet deals. You need to know how to, right, protect your investments. Like this isn't this is average for average stuff, but becoming average in real estate, become an average dentist, you got to spend 5 years doing dentistry, right? 10,000 hours, right? So when I say average real estate, it doesn't mean you can just start day one and do this. It takes 10,000 hours to become average and be able to get average returns.
So going back to the return concept, I mean, I'm a person of if I'm going to project out like something in the future, I want to be more conservative, right? So I'm always going to notch down my return because I would, even though I invest heavily in real estate and I might be returning far more than 16% annually, I don't want to assume that I'm going to make those returns every year for the next 10 years.
So I do
So
the same thing, but my average annual return on my exits is 49% a year.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I've ratcheted from 49 to 16.
So I guess that's it. So what I want to put this out there for people is, okay, what is the average investor likely to get? Because if I put number like a 16% on this, right, it's people are gonna be like, well, who gets 16%? I mean, you could share, you could say I do anecdotally or whatever, but I think that for projecting out and planning, I like to be more conservative on the numbers. But yes, I mean, I love the 16% for real estate.
Every time I research numbers, I'll look at a project that was been owned by somebody for like 20 years, right? I'll run the numbers. Usually it comes out to around 16%.
Okay.
So like it's not just pie in the sky. This is like anecdotal, right? Like I'll go out there, I'll just run the numbers on something. I'll be like, okay, like when did you buy this? Or when did you build this? I'll be like, oh, 1995. And I'll be like, cool. Like, how much did you build it for? Right. And
Yeah.
then I'll be like, okay, like, how much is it worth now? And like, how much are you cash flowing now? And when I like backward do the math, it usually comes out to 16%.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, you have those deals that are the infinite returns, right? Like that you literally pull out all the money and you're cash flowing still. So yeah, I can totally see how you could get to that number. I just don't want people to like discredit that right away and be like, I'm not going to get 16%. Yes, we could have a whole discussion on here's an example of 20% returns. Here's an example of 30. Here's an example of 50. And just kind of
Yeah.
drilling down and bringing back to earth, like what should you put in your model to project
So,
out?
so yeah, yeah. I mean, I think about it like like in the chair production as a dentist, right? Like I know dentists that produce net collect 300K a month, right? Those guys are like on the high end, right? And then I know the guys that are 200K a month net production as a dentist. I'm like, those guys, all studs, right? Anything
Yeah.
under a hundred, anything over 100 is solid in my mind, right? And anything
Mhm.
less than 100, I'm like, hey, like you got some work to do, right? You got to take CE, you got to sharpen your skills, got to sharpen your communication skills, right? And
Mhm.
so I would equate the 16% to like the 100K net a month dentist, right? You're not going to
Fair.
typically collect 100K net a month right out of school as a dentist. You're usually doing like 50, 60, right? But after 5 years, if you're not doing 100K, you better take a look in the mirror. And that's the same thing with the 6%, 16%. If after
That's
5 years of real estate, you're not getting 16%, you better take a look in the mirror. Something's broken with your mental model on your
yeah.
underwriting or on how you're viewing things. Yeah, but I'm glad you're asking these questions, Reed, because I agree. Most people just throw out numbers and most people don't understand those numbers. They don't believe them. And so
Yeah.
I think you asking these questions are the right questions to ask.
And I'll say something on that too is you should be getting a greater return in real estate because it's a little more work. Like it's more of a skill, right? So anything that you do that takes a little bit more time and greater skill should be rewarded with a greater return
And risk. It's always
and
risk
risk.
versus
Yes.
return, right? That's basic
Yes.
finance model. People all the time ask me like, "Oh, but like what happens if this happens?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's called risk." Like what happens if no one goes to your dental office tomorrow or for the rest of your dental office's life, right? Like what happens if like one patient writes a scathing review and it shows up on the news? Your dental practice is toast, right?
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
always risk. If you're trying to eliminate risk in life, you are diluting your returns to inflation or worse. So you need to take calculated, smart risks. You need to hedge your risk. You just need to be smart.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
These are great
All right.
questions. The
Okay.
last one here is I also like to leverage tax solutions, right? Take all the solutions that the government gives us and incentivizes us to do. And when I do that too, on top of my real estate, after 20 years, putting in 200K a year, the number comes out to 60 million. Okay. And so that's like not paying taxes each year because you're following the IRS's like incentives. Okay.
Mhm.
Because if you're not paying taxes, then you can roll 400K a year instead of 200K. Okay. Because
So
yeah,
go
let me
ahead.
give you a basic math. So let's say a dentist is making like, oh, 600K a year. Okay. They're probably throwing 200K a year at the IRS and 200K a year into investing. So I'm saying for this 600K dentist or 700K dentist, that's how much they're making a year. If instead of throwing 200K at the IRS and 200K into investing, you're not throwing any to the IRS and you're investing all 400K. Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
Uh, Um, and then the thing I like to say here, Reed, is kind of getting back to your comment, like what happens if I don't do this? What if I don't execute? Right? Like I just don't do it well. Well, I'm like, well, if you started with 10 million doing dollar cost averaging, right? And then you implement the tax solutions in the real estate and it's like if you just follow it, you're 60 million. But even if you screw it up, right? And your returns are half as much as expected, you're still at 30 million, which is still three times dollar cost
Yep.
averaging, right? Even if you
Yep.
screw it up,
Mhm.
right? I got a C in this class, right? I'm a 50 percentile instead of like just following the plan and I screw it up, I'm still triple better than I was not following the plan.
Yeah, I think you'll like, so you haven't seen this full document, but I'll get to a little bit of what you were kind of stating there in a chart form a little bit too.
Okay.
Can you see it now, the screen share? Am I showing it?
I'm stopping my share and now, and then since I got through all my points, and let's see if I can see your share. I still see Reed's Falday's screen. Yep.
The five-step framework. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It,
So
it may
basically,
you may not have seen mine because you were still sharing, and maybe
oh,
nobody saw mine because you were still sharing. So next
yep.
time we'll just have to like switch back and forth. So
I stopped sharing. I did.
oh,
So
you
now I just
did.
re-shared it. Yep, yep. So
Okay.
hopefully we can see it on there. Okay. So we basically we were just spending a lot of time there on the return side, right? Through showing a rate of return, right? So Josh kind of talked about how those will project out over 20 years. This in this plan, everything's been kind of a 10-year plan, right? Or in my framework, I'm like, how do you produce how can you retire from dentistry in 10 years? That's kind of what this was. It's even a shorter timeline. Okay, so the calculating your nest egg part of this, if you work back from how much you need per year, you divide it by your average rate of return. So in this case, Josh might use 16%, right? Because he's heavily involved with real estate. He controls those returns. He feels good about that. This number is going to be obviously uh, much lower, right? It's going to be much lower. So because you get a greater return.
Yep.
Uh, Okay, so basically, this goes back into your savings plan. To reach 3.7 million in 10 years at this return level, you'll need to invest this much a year.
How
Again,
did
if
you
you,
do that math for people?
uh, I mean, you have to just figure that out, right? You'd put this into a compound interest calculator at 8% annualized return and figure out if you could get to this number, right?
And
The
for those
math,
listening, just type it in Gemini or ChatGPT.
yeah.
Say, yeah, if I want my nest egg to be this big in 10 years and I'm going to add an 8% return on my investment money each year, how much do I need to invest each year? That'll probably be the simplest.
Yes, they'll produce the number. And so from there, you just want to figure out the reality check of can you save this much and invest this much a year? Because I mean, that's a big part of this, right? $258,000 is a lot of money to invest a year. So
Yep.
you got to figure out if you can work into that. So I did a little bit of just like quick math. This is taxes, uh, effective tax rates are all over the place based on individual situations. So we just, put simple stuff, 33% effective tax rate. Say you can save 50% of your post-tax dollars. So roughly to save this much a year, you would need to make this much a year. That's kind of was how I was thinking about this, right?
Yeah, and I think rubber meets the road here. There are two types of dentists, right? There's dentists that still live in their first home, right? The 2,500 square foot home they bought when they got out of school, right? And those guys making 770 a year are usually able to chunk away, 300K a year, right? At least. And then there's the guys who, bought a much larger home, a second home now, and then sold their first home, and it's 5,000 square feet. And then they got the lake place, right? And those guys making 770, guys or girls, have actually real trouble saving anything, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more than 50K a year. So at this point, you really need to understand this is a lifestyle decision, right? Do you want to work for 30 years, right? And have that big house and have that lake house, or do you want to work for 10, 15, 20 years and, keep expense, still drive around your Honda Accord, right? Still drive around, I mean,
Mhm.
it's really mindset here if you're at like the 770. Now, the guys that are like, buying the lake house and the 5,000 square foot home, but also grinding on their business like nonstop, and now they're making 1.5 million a year, right? So if you turn up the nozzle on living expenses, you also have to continue to keep that nozzle on high on self-improvement, practice improvement, right? Where I see get people in trouble is they grow their practice to a piece, 770, and then they put it on coast mode, right? But their nozzle on life expenses is turned up and not
Mhm.
on coast mode. It's on like we're just going to live life, and then you just have to be you have to look yourself in the mirror again and be like, look, this is the decision I've made. I'd like to
Yep.
put my practice on coast mode. I'd like to focus on family. I'm just going to spend a bunch of money the next 30 years. And it just is what it is, right? I mean, that's a personal decision you need to make.
And I'll say this, so like my wife's a dentist, we're both dentists. We own a couple practices. The thing is, it's really easy before you have kids and all that to save 70% of your income, 80% of your income, and we did. And so we don't do that as much now, but when you front load it, right? And you do this early in your career, then you don't have to quite be so frugal after that. So that helps too, is early and front loading it.
Doing the work on
But
the front end.
yeah,
You're very rare, Reed, that you can do both the dental and the real estate and keep it kind of in their boxes 90% of the time. Um,
90%, yeah.
I think most, I know for myself, it was very hard, right? To do well at the dental and then do well at the real estate. When people look at what I'm doing, right? Like on the development side, like they're like, wow, you are busy, like you are active, right? Like I was talking to the head of one of the local banks and I forget the word he was using, but basically like I'm all in. Like my nozzle on business is still fully turned,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And And it kind of needs to be. I mean, that's just my nature anyways. I don't do anything halfway, right? I'm like all in. But if you look at like what I've done recently with my family, right? We got a bigger house. We got a ski lake condo, right? Because our kids are getting to that age where during the winter we want to do something with them, right? Is it basketball and volleyball? What do you want to do? We want to do a family activity, right? Family activities are typically golf, tennis, boating, skiing, right? So skiing kind of fits the winter one for us. And to be, get the kids good and that kind of commitment level, you gotta have them on the ski team. And driving up to the mountain for the ski team every week every day is a massive pain, right? And so, I've made a choice to have a higher expense load than I did prior when my kids were little, like you just said, Reed, right?
Yep. Yep.
I have higher expenses. I have a bigger house. We have a pool in the summer, right? All the cousins come over, the friends from school come over, right? So I've made a choice to have a higher expenses due to mainly those two items. The skiing, the ski condo, and things around that. I guess it's the lake in the summer condo, but and then in the house, the bigger house. But I didn't coast, right? I didn't coast on the work side. If I was coasting on the work side, I would not be building up any kind of net worth right now. My net worth would be completely flat, right? And maybe I'd match with inflation, maybe I wouldn't. So I just want to reflect here on a personal level, like speaking to the audience, like I am also making these decisions, right? Reed is also making these decisions.
Yep.
And it's um, you can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything you want in life.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'll just say this too is I'm actually kind of proud of like my wife and I when you go from a very heavy savings mindset, right? Like cut costs, save, stock it away. It's hard to come out of that sometimes. Too many people stay there too long and don't allow them to spend some money and have some fun, right? Like those lifestyle things like maybe upgrading your house a little bit or going on that vacation that's a little bit nicer. So I'm proud that we put in the work and then now we're able to kind of stretch that a little bit more because that's what I'm getting at. It's not that necessarily Dave Ramsey, beans and rice, rice and beans. Like if like you said, Josh, if you can grow your income at the same rate that you're growing your lifestyle, like in the beginning, it's this. I kept my expenses low, income was going up. I had that big delta that I can
Yeah.
invest. Now, if you choose to keep your expenses go up, but you can also increase your income at the same time, then you still have that same delta. You can invest and keep growing. So
It, it
it's a good concept.
It's a time. I think the other piece here is what we're talking about is 18 summers, right? You only have 18 summers with your kids. When they're babies, you like to be there, right? But it's like, okay, I was there, I'm going to work. But when they're like 7, 8, 9, they're in sports, they're playing basketball, they're doing the baseball, and those are things that, once it's gone, right? And another framework we like to use is instead of a positivity mindset, envisioning like your positive outcomes, is regret minimization, right? What are you going to regret most?
Yeah.
Right? And when people typically do that, it's like, man, I didn't spend enough time with my kids. That's usually, or I didn't spend enough time with my spouse and we're divorced, right? Those are like the two biggest ones. And so at a certain point, yeah, you can grind when your kids are young and your spouse are young, but at a certain point, you do need to put time into your kids and put time into your spouse if you want those relationships and those memories. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So just to kind of wrap this up, because I thought you might like this, Josh, is these are the different, this is kind of what you were alluding to of the different returns, right? Your 6% return, your 10% return, and your 12% return, and roughly what it would yield on a 10-year runway, right? Assuming you're investing the same amount, which was that 258K a year. So you could ratchet that up, of course, but that's what the math does. That much invested every year produces at a 6% return, gives you 3.4, and a 10% return, 4.1, and a 12%, 4.5. And these are the corresponding incomes that would come from that, assuming the same return going forward. So
uh,
kind of shows you the big step up.
100%. And that's, yeah, you build a sensitivity table is what we call those. 100% what I do. And in your expenses, guys, remember to include like, Trump accounts for your kids, 5,000 a year, right? If you're paying your kids to the practice, like, I don't know, 13,000 a year per kid, right? Like include like savings rate stuff too.
Mhm.
Um, whole life insurance, I don't know. Whatever else you do that's kind of an investment, whether it's in your kids or something else, you also need to include those in your expenses if they're important to you. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about cash flow and real estate, Reed.
Yep. Yep.
Do you
So
want to keep
can I just
going? And then,
I'll wrap this end up here and then let's talk about that. So basically this is just going through this exercise will basically allow you to decide, do you need to earn more, as you and I already talked about,
yep,
right? How do you keep growing the income within your practice? How do you keep leveling up as an owner, as a producer, etc.? How do you maybe save more aggressively, right?
yep.
Like that's to Josh's point about really nailing down that budget, knowing where money is going, so you can decide how much delta you have there and how much you can actually stock away. And then the other part is target investments with a higher yield or greater tax efficiency. And that's where Josh was pointing to, hey, average net return in real estate 16% versus stock market 8%, right? And so, that's kind of those three different levers you can pull. You can either earn, you got to earn more, save more, and target better investments with better yields. So just wanted to wrap that up.
No, you nailed it. That's absolutely perfect. I mean, I was talking to an investor about this yesterday who's on a 10-year timeline. Um, and I'm going to send him this video because this is like the most common question, one of the most common questions we get. So, is it okay if I kind of share a real estate example?
How about, yeah, you share one and I'll share one. So
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So here's like a template I built to explain this concept to folks. So all the time people are like, hey, I want to replace my dental income with real estate income. And this explains how it works. Okay. So when people start purchasing a piece of real estate or building a piece of real estate, the cash flow at the beginning is usually quite small. Just use 5% as like a normal number. And the market kind of builds it that way. We can go into more why, but it's based off of like values and it's ultimately based off of like debt service coverage ratio that banks require. It's the most common reason that 5% return is there. But when you talk to the avatar of, the wealthiest people in America are little old widows. Okay. So historically, and I mean not anymore, like women are very smart and they are doing amazing things in this world. But historically, a husband would build like this big real estate portfolio, right? And then he would pass away and he'd pass it on to his widow. And if you ever look at their financials, these widows are just cash flowing like monster, right? They're just making so much money, and you're like, oh my God, that's what I need to do, right? How do I do that? And it's a combination of buying right? Maybe the right location, the right price, but really it's like Warren Buffett. It's time, right? Why has Warren Buffett done so well? God, he's smart, all the good things, but he's also been investing since when did he start his thing was like 1967. I mean, it's like 50
Yep.
years, right? And so when you take fundamental good decision making and then you tack on time, that's where returns are there. Can you see this one, Reed?
I can't see it. No.
Hmm.
So,
It
oh,
says
here
I'm
I see it.
sharing.
So I can click Josh's Cochran screen. Yep, I can see it
Yep.
now. There we
Okay.
go.
Perfect. So look, there's an example of an apartment building. Okay. Let's say you build an apartment building. When you have an apartment building, you charge rents to tenants, right? $2,000 a month times 12 months is $24,000 per apartment, let's say, right? Times how many apartments you have. Okay. So in this example, this building is getting $1 million in rents per year. Okay. I'm just doing rounded numbers here. On average, expenses range, right, from like, let's say if you have a tax abatement, like 18% to if you're terrible at taking care of your building, like 50%. We'll use 1/3 on average, okay? 33%. Reed knows this stuff well as an asset manager, okay? So you got to take those expenses from your gross revenue. So you take $1 million, you minus the 333,000, 30%. And then you also have debt, right? You just bought this building or you just built this building. So you have a big debt payment, okay, of 400,000. So your net cash flow, okay, on this building is $266,000. Okay. Now, what we don't mention here is how much money it would cost you to build this building or buy this building in cash, right? But off the top of my head, I don't know how much cash I'd have to put in here. Let's just say like, I don't know, 4 million bucks or something. Okay. So you're getting 266,000 off your 4 million bucks. Okay. You put in 4 million bucks to build this or buy this, you're getting 266. Okay. Read, I mean, probably it'd be like 5%. So like 266 divided by five if you're doing the math and
That's what I was doing. Yep.
yeah, what numbers you come up with?
So because you're doing like a five cap, it'd be 5.3 million.
Yeah, so you put in like 5 million and you get 266 a year in cash flow. Okay. That's like rounded, very normal numbers. Okay. But this is what happens. I think I have this at like a 3% growth rate. Okay. Your revenue is much larger than your expenses. Okay. Your expenses of 333 are growing at 3% a year, but your revenue is a much larger number. It's three times as big, and that's also growing at 3.3%. So when you look at this growth curve, look at your revenue just go. Okay. This is year 30. Okay. So, you know, husband builds this, buys this, okay, when they're 40, 30 years later, he's passed away, wife's 70 years old, okay? The cash flow now is $1.1 million a year passively, right? They have a property manager managing this. So this is what happens when you run into that little old lady. Maybe it's year 20 and she's making 770,000 a year doing nothing. Just this one property and 1.1 million, right? So these are the scenarios you really run into. But this is how it happens. So is much larger growing at 3%. Okay. Your expenses, which are this little lilac line, can you see how your expenses are growing at 3%, but it's much smaller, right? So you've got revenue growing bigger, faster than expenses over time, right? Which creates more cash flow. Okay. So that's one thing that why owning real estate over time is super helpful. Um, the next one here is your debt. So what's great about debt is like, oh man, you just bought this building or whatever. You're looking at your debt, like you owe so much, like all that money just makes it mostly goes to the bank, right? Like, dang, that sucks, right? There are some advantages. You get to write off the interest. There's principal pay down, right? So you are paying down the loan. But what's great about this bank loan, most of these are fixed. It doesn't go up. So even though your expenses are going a little bit and your revenue is going up a lot, which is awesome, your debt service isn't going up. Okay. So that free cash flow that going to you is also increasing because your debt's not going up. And so this yellow line here depicts your cash flow. Okay. So you can see that your cash flow is like outpacing your expenses and your debt. Okay. So that is why real estate makes money, cash flow, right? That's how you replace your income. And you can see it's like, man, after 10 years, it's starting to do some work. I went from 266 to 470, right?
You
Like, yeah,
you can see the crossover point is right around that year 6 or 7,
yeah,
which you can see that in a lot of multifamily models. If you do like a 9 year, 10 year time horizon on a
yep,
deal, you see that free cash flow jump from 5, 6% to 10, 12% pretty quick when that threshold gets crossed.
100%, right? And so when people say to me, how do I replace my income with real estate, it's not a quick answer. It's this, right? One is you need to buy it right? That's the biggest thing. And that takes tons of experience, right? You can't just go on Craigslist, you can't go on LoopNet, you can't go on Zillow. You're not going to see these deals that cash flow, right? Usually these are relationship deals. Okay. So one is you need to have the skill set to acquire this, right? Or you need to partner with people who do have that skill set. Okay.
Mhm.
That'll get you into like starting off on the right foot where you didn't overpay for something. Okay. A lot of people overpaid for things the last 4 years in multifamily and they're really struggling right now. So one is the buying right or building right. The next piece is asset management. You're not managing the property, but you're managing the property managers, keeping them on point, right? That's something Reed does every Friday. And then um, the last part here is time. So if you're looking to, I never feel comfortable helping people get out of dentistry in 5 years because I just know it takes time,
It's too
right?
short. Too
And
short.
and realistically, I don't put people in one property and just let it sit like this, right? What I do, if we're talking a 10-year timeline, we start with the first property. We take after 5 years on average, I would say 10 years because we got to have that healthy, sophisticated mindset of patience. But let's say on average of 5 years in reality, we take those funds that they earned from the first one, right? Doubled up the money, and we invest it in the next property and we double it up again, right? So we're taking a nest egg today of $1 million and we're turning it into 4 million over those 10 years, right? So, I mean, that's typically how it happens. And then once you finally stop doing that strategy of doubling up your money, then you just leave it in
Let
some
the time work.
in a
Yeah.
good location, right? In a good location with fixed debt, and then it just continues to build in cash flow. So 20 years is the timeline where I'm like, yeah, you could be worth like 30, 50 million bucks. Like if you just follow this path, right? If it's a 20-year timeline, if it's a 10-year timeline, we just get after it and get started. And at 10 years, you reevaluate, right? Like this is how much net worth I have, this is how many assets I have. Like you build your strategy, you're planning your cash flow, you're planning your net worth exactly like Reed showed you. But at like the 5-year point, the 10-year point, you revisit, you probably want to revisit yearly, but at those points, you really revisit the numbers and say, where am I at today? Where do I want to go from here?
Yep. And I think, and this another key element here is if you're owning a property for 10, 15, 20 years plus, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for some value add in there where it's going to be like, oh, I'm going to release this, like a retail strip center or something. I just went through kind of a new lease up and bringing in some new tenants, but they all got their rates bumped quite a bit because market rate changed. So those are huge swings in there too that you have opportunity the longer you own the property. And then in cases too, you can get those big equity swings. Now the property's worth more. Now you can cash out refi, pull out all your initial capital, and then go do it again with another property. Now you got this one making money for you. Now you got this one, and you just recycled your capital. Not to mention tax benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, my quick example, much faster. Yours is much more detailed, but I just want to make it simple. Is one of the first properties I bought was a retail strip center, and this is one of the ones I was talking about releasing. And if I just hold this property for the next 15 years, it'll be
Yep.
worth it'll be worth $8 million conservatively, and it'll spin off $640,000 of free cash flow, right? Like
A
debt
year.
a year, debt free, right? Like that's just
And everyone hears that and says, dude, you're good. Like, why are you even working right now? Right? Like that's freedom. You just like touched everybody's heartstrings, right? Because that's like freedom in people's mind is 640K a year, one property, triple net, which is like super low owner like responsibilities, right?
it's the easiest property I own, one of the easiest properties I own. So and that was just buying right at the right time, like you said, that buying right element, and then knowing enough to restructure leases as necessary, go through those kind of heartburn moments when you might be facing a vacancy. But as you said before, there's risk. There's risk in dentistry, there's risk in real estate. Like you just got to know how to mitigate those risks,
And
which
bet
takes
on
time.
yourself. Like do the work
Yeah.
and bet on yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
I love those situations. Like it sounds like you do too, because yeah, you don't know the outcome's going to be, right? But usually you win. You don't always
Yeah.
win, but usually you win, right? And so like, wow, I just like created a lot of wealth for myself
Pretty cool.
doing
It's
this,
pretty
right?
cool. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay. Reed, I think this was a great idea to this topic today. I think how to build an income replacing real estate portfolio. I think this is an important question, one of the most common ones we get. I think your framework on how to do the math is fantastic. I think, AI is there to help people now. So as you run
Yes.
your own numbers,
Yep.
it's much easier than it used to be. I think, some of the concepts I covered are kind of level. Reed's very good at keeping it simple. I'm very good at escalating complexity and teaching like real savvy, like two, three, 400 level stuff like right away. So, think about those things I said, ask AI questions, participate on our dental real estate partners group if you have follow-up questions. We're happy to help. And we're all on this journey together. And it's our honor to serve others and share, and we all learn from each other. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to connect with us directly and keep the conversation going, join our private Facebook group. We'd love to have you in the discussion. If you want to see or listen to any of our other shows, you can find them on our YouTube channel by searching Dental Real Estate Partners. Or if you prefer to listen in podcast format, look for us on your favorite podcast app or streaming platform.
Content from Dental Real Estate Partners is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, legal, or investment advice. All investments carry risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Always consult a qualified professional. Dental Real Estate Partners is not responsible for outcomes from actions taken based on this content.